Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Make a Better World. This is week 9 of the Trump smokeout. I think I misspoke last week. It was week 8. I said it was week 9. But this is a week of March 17th to 23rd of 2025. And so we're 9 weeks into Trump's presidency. And before I go on about Trump, which I've been doing on this channel, I just want to say a few things to clarify my position. I've said some pretty nasty things in the last few videos, some of which might even be interpreted as death threats against Trump. I want to assure you guys that I have absolutely no intention of trying to kill him or anybody. I've never killed anybody in my life, at least not intentionally. I don't think even unintentionally. And I'm not a murderer. I'm a good guy, okay? And I even tell the truth, which is what few people in this country seem to do anymore. I was thought I was a really honest person. The worst things I've done in my life have been purely accidental. I've hardly done anything bad out of bad intent. I like to think I'm a good person. And so the last thing I would do is kill anybody. I've never even been I've never been in the military. I'm really glad I haven't, because I couldn't even kill a foreigner. I can't think of anyone in any foreign country that I think deserves to be killed. I mean, that's just not me. I can't do that in good conscience. So get that out of your mind. I'm not a killer, okay, and I don't advocate it either. You know, and so I just want to clear the air on that. And I guess it's not good to hate anybody either. I don't like hate. Hate. I even have a quote in this book I wrote called um, um, are we on? No, no. It's called "Let's Make a Better World." I can't even think clearly right now because that's the name of this channel. Actually, and it was called "My Spiritual Journey," featured in another channel. But I can't. Yeah, what was the quote? I don't even remember. Uh, Probably not that important. You can tell I'm high because I'm not coherent very much right now. But at least I got that disclaimer out about Trump. And the song I'm featuring today, I don't know how many guys know this one. It's called King Midas in Reverse by the Hollies. Here's a picture of the singles jacket. Kind of a strange song. I never really knew what they were singing about in this song. I mean, the analogy is, I think you guys all know about King Midas from Greek mythology. He was a king that the gods had, given him the Midas touch, meaning everything he touched would turn to gold. Of course, he thought that was a blessing until he ends up turning his daughter into gold, and then he realizes it was a curse, and he asks the gods to reverse it for him. So I guess the lesson of that, we all learned that story in the lesson, which I think is a pretty good moral, is that all that glitters is not gold. Don't wish everything was gold. Don't try to turn everything into gold. And I don't know if Trump ever got that message or anybody on his cabinet, but I used to own some gold, not a lot of gold. I had a few gold coins. It is a beautiful metal. I can see why people have prized it all throughout history. But, I've never been obsessed with anything material, which is why I don't like capitalism, because I think capitalism is based on the premise that we want more material things. And maybe some of us do, but, I don't think it's a good goal for humanity. I think capitalism due to fail. I'm all over the place today. I'm really sorry about this. But, yeah, I was talking about King Midas in reverse. I talked about King Midas so far. So in the song, what they mean by King Midas in reverse, they say all he touches turns to dust. Instead of gold, it turns to dust. So I guess there are some people you might consider King Mice in reverse, basically, flops, people that can never get anything right in their life. And I know the feeling because I've been like that a good part of my life. I think it just means that you haven't really found your reason for being here yet. Maybe you're too much of a slave, at least subconsciously, and so you regret everything you're doing and you don't do it well. I think that's usually what happens. So we become a King Midas in reverse when we do that. But the reason I picked this song is because I think, I already mentioned the analogy between King Midas and good old Trump. And they even had a fake picture of him wearing a gold crown, and he's putting him with a gold dollar bill. I think he's trying to make everything he touches turns to gold, but I think he's really King Midas in reverse. I think everything he's touching right now, which is this country, is turning to dust. America's turning to dust, Mr. Trump. You're safe from, I'm not going to try to do anything to you, but I just want you to know that if you got some, part of your brain will register that. So anyway, that's my message to you for today, Mr. Trump. You're King Midas in reverse. Everything you're touching is turning to dust, so you better not touch anything else. We're gonna make sure you don't, but or else get the cursor removed. But anyway, and the other thing I want to talk about, I'm not really talking about any stories today, but I guess I have a little bit of a story. I just watched, one of Bill Maher's comedy news sketches. I love Bill Maher, by the way. A lot of people think he should be president. Not only is really funny, but he's very smart and he's very knowledgeable, and he seems to know exactly what's wrong with this country right now. And I agree with just about everything I hear him say. I mean, he's amazing. But one thing he talked about today, I didn't even realize this because I didn't watch this news story, and besides all the news I'm getting is comedy news anyway. But what I learned was that, of course, lying Trump, he said, there's just tons and tons of waste in our military. So, I mean, what I heard from Bill Maher is that our military budget is like $900 billion a year. I mean, that's outrageous. I can barely even imagine that much money. But that's how much the taxpayers are spending every year to fund our military, so that now we can attack our allies and make a new alliances with our enemies. Good old Trump. So that's what your $900 billion are paying for, fellow Americans. I'm sorry to say it, but anyway. But the thing that Maher was saying about the Pentagon, he said even though Trump was making this huge accusation, he cut the budget about 500 billion. I mean, I'm a mathematician. That's a 20th of a percent. He cut our budget a 20th of a percent after making this big fuss about how we're wasting all this money. Meanwhile, he's laying off the park rangers and the cops. The people are doing a good job, and the postmen. I mean, the guy's insane. The guy's insane. But like I said, I'm not gonna do anything to him, and let's just maybe we have to pray to a higher power. I hate to say that because I've been agnostic most of my life, but if there is a loving God in this universe, he better do something about Trump. We need you more than ever now, God, if you really do exist. I don't believe you exist in the form that they talk about in the Bible, because he was pretty horrible. I don't think you're that horrible God. I think you're a good God who's the sum of all consciousness to the universe. But maybe you could help us as part of that consciousness figure out how we're gonna get rid of this guy Trump. And I don't mean get rid of his life. I just mean get him out of power. So anyway, let's pray to you and your infinite wisdom and see what you can do for us. And meanwhile, let's do as much as we can for ourselves, fellow Americans. So anyway, that concludes my video for today on the Trump smokeout. Thank you for watching. Let's make a better world. I always try to end on a hopeful note. So here's a picture of DC and its former glory. Let's try to get DC, our capital, back to being a good capital and a good city that reflects all of our needs as a democracy. Maybe we should move it to Kansas City because that's a lot closer to the geographic. They're the center of population of this country, which is now in Kansas, not too far from Kansas City. Maybe that would make that part of the country more liberal if the capital got moved there. I kind of think it would, and maybe we'd have a country that meets our needs and the rest of the world's needs better than we ever had before. So anyway, thank you for watching. Let's make a better world, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.